She had 10 seconds to make a choice that would either save her life or end it. The coffee pot trembled in her hands, brown liquid sloshing against the glass as she approached the corner booth where the man with the scarred eyebrows sat watching her. Everyone in Kapoor's diner had learned not to see Simone Hartwick's bruises. The construction workers studied their eggs. The elderly couples focused on their toast. The waitresses moved through their routines with eyes carefully lowered. But this stranger in the leather jacket, this man who'd been coming here for 8 months, he wasn't looking away. His gaze locked onto the purple-green discoloration blooming across her left cheekbone, the makeup failing to conceal what 6 days of healing couldn't erase. He saw the split in her bottom lip. He saw the way she moved her left arm with careful protection, ribs underneath screaming with every breath. Most dangerous of all, he saw the expression she wore, the one she'd practiced in the mirror until it became her face. Resignation. The quiet acceptance of a death sentence. The eyes that had already started grieving for themselves. Victor Castellano's coffee cup sat empty. Simone reached to refill it, muscle memory guiding her hand because making eye contact meant being seen, and being seen had taught her nothing but pain for 2 solid years. Her gaze fixed on a point 2 feet ahead, the same spot she always chose, the safe distance between visibility and invisibility. But then Victor's voice cut through the morning silence, for words that detonated like a bomb in the careful quiet everyone had constructed. Who did this to you? Every fork stopped mid-air. Every conversation died. Heads turned with the slow, horrified motion of people watching a car accident unfold. Simone's hand jerked. Coffee splashed across the counter, spreading in a dark stain that nobody moved to clean. Her eyes, wide and terrified and trapped, finally met his. Her voice cracked like thin ice under weight. Cabinet door. I'm clumsy. The lie came automatically, rehearsed, the same words she'd given the ER nurse 4 times, the same explanation that had satisfied everyone who preferred comfort over truth. But Victor didn't accept it. His tone stayed gentle, yet absolutely unyielding. No. That's a closed fist. Right-handed. Someone taller than you. Someone who's done this before. The color drained from Simone's face. Her lips moved without producing sound. Through the diner's front window, Victor saw what he'd been trained to notice. A silver Mercedes S-Class, tinted windows, engine running. Parked directly across the street. Watching. Irving Kapoor materialized beside Victor's booth, wiping the same spot on the counter over and over, his hands moving with the nervous energy of a man who'd been swallowing his conscience for too long. His voice barely reached Victor's ears. Her husband. Desmond Hartwick. Owns the dealerships. His family runs this town. That woman's been dying in slow motion for 2 years. Nobody says anything because, Victor finished the sentence. Because cowards are comfortable. This story cuts deeper than you can imagine, but stay with me until the end, because what happens next will restore your faith in humanity. Drop a comment with your city so I can see how far this message reaches. And if you believe in standing up for those who can't stand up for themselves, hit that subscribe button right now. This channel exists for stories of courage that matter, stories that might save someone's life. Maybe someone you know. Maybe someone you haven't met yet. Don't just watch. Be part of the solution. Simone's hands shook violently now, coffee pot rattling against her palm. Please, she whispered, the word breaking apart in her throat. Please stop. If he thinks I talk to you, the diner door opened. Desmond Hartwick entered like he owned not just the building but the oxygen inside it, every molecule of air bending to his will. 6'2", expensive suit that cost more than most people in this room made in a month, hair professionally styled, smile that belonged on campaign posters and charity galas. He moved directly to Victor's table without hesitation, sat down uninvited, close enough that his knee nearly touched Victor's. Deliberate invasion of space. A dominance display. Victor Castellano, Desmond's voice carried the smooth, educated danger of a man who'd never faced real consequences. Yes, I know who you are. Ex-convict. Did 9 years for nearly beating a man to death. Leader of a motorcycle gang with a rather theatrical name. Victor didn't react. Didn't blink. His stillness was the kind that came from prison yards, from learning that the first person to flinch loses everything. Desmond leaned closer, voice dropping to a register meant only for Victor's ears. Here's reality, Mr. Castellano. My wife is clumsy. Always has been. I've begged her to be more careful, but you know how women are. Emotional. Careless. He gestured toward Simone, who stood frozen near the kitchen, and the casual cruelty in that gesture said more than his words ever could. If anyone, and I mean anyone, tries to fill her head with paranoid fantasies, I'll have Sheriff Oxley arrest them for harassment and stalking. I'll have my attorneys bury them in lawsuits that'll take everything they own. And I'll make sure everyone they know suffers consequences. He stood, smoothed his jacket with the self-satisfaction of a man who'd never lost a battle that mattered. Simone, darling, I'll see you at home by 9 p.m. sharp. Don't be late again. The threat in those last 3 words hung in the air like smoke. He walked out. The Mercedes pulled away, leaving nothing but the echo of power in its wake. The diner remained silent. Nobody spoke. Nobody moved. This was Ridgemont, Oregon, population 14,000, where Hartwick Automotive employed 340 people directly and supported 800 more jobs indirectly. Where Desmond's donations funded the public library, the community center renovation, the annual 4th of July fireworks. Where everyone had learned that depending on a monster to feed your family meant never acknowledging his teeth. Victor stood, dropped cash on the counter for a breakfast he hadn't touched, and walked toward the door. Simone blocked his path, tears streaming down her face, cutting tracks through her carefully applied makeup. You don't understand, her voice shattered into fragments. He found his first wife when she ran. Nobody ever saw her again. He'll kill me. He'll. Victor pulled a card from his pocket. Blank except for a phone number written in pen, no names, no addresses, nothing traceable. Text this number with your work schedule. Just your schedule. Nothing else. His voice was iron wrapped in compassion, the tone of a man who'd made promises in blood and kept them. You've been dying for 2 years. Let me show you how to live. Simone stared at the card like it was both salvation and death sentence, her fingers trembling as she took it. Victor walked out into the morning sun, leaving behind a diner that erupted in whispered conversations the moment the door closed. Across town, in his executive office with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the dealership lot, Desmond Hartwick made a phone call. We have a problem. Handle it. 2 words that promised violence. 2 words that started a war. But Desmond Hartwick had no idea who he'd just threatened, or what Victor had spent 14 years preparing for. 23 years ago, Victor had a sister named Adriana. 24 years old, radiant, full of dreams about opening her own bakery, the kind of dreams that make families smile and plan for futures that feel guaranteed. She married Rodrigo Vance, a junior prosecutor who wore expensive suits and smiled at all the right people, who brought wine to family dinners and complimented their mother's cooking and seemed like everything a sister could want in a husband. For 2 years, the Castellano family believed Adriana had found her fairy tale. They were catastrophically wrong. Victor remembers the last conversation with sickening clarity, every word burned into memory like a brand that never stops hurting. Adriana called him late one Thursday night, voice trembling with something that might have been fear or might have been the final breaking point of hope. Vic, I think I need to. The line went dead. When he called back, Rodrigo answered, voice smooth as silk, reasonable and concerned in that way that makes you doubt your own instincts. She's sleeping, Victor. You know how emotional she gets. I'll have her call tomorrow. Tomorrow never came. The official report said Adriana fell down the basement stairs. 14 steps. Her neck broke on the concrete floor. Rodrigo called 911, performed CPR, wept at the funeral with the grief of a devoted husband. The investigation lasted 48 hours before being ruled an accidental death. But Victor saw the autopsy photos his detective friend slipped him at a bar 3 weeks later, manila envelope that weighed nothing and everything simultaneously. The bruises on her wrists, 4 days old. The healed fracture in her collarbone, 6 weeks old. The pattern of injuries that told a story the prosecutor's office refused to read because Rodrigo was one of them, part of the system that protected its own. Victor's revenge was swift and nearly fatal. He found Rodrigo leaving a bar, beat him with a tire iron for 7 minutes of pure rage that felt like justice and cost him 9 years in Redwood Penitentiary. In prison, surrounded by concrete and steel and men who'd also learned that the system doesn't protect everyone equally, Victor made a promise to Adriana's memory. Never again would he be too late. Never again would he ignore the signs. Never again would he let someone die while he did nothing. Upon release, he joined the Devil's Covenant, a motorcycle club that didn't deal drugs or run guns or fight over territory. Their mission was singular and absolute. Extract women and children from domestic violence situations when the system failed them. The club was founded 16 years ago by Marcus Hammer Duggan, whose daughter was murdered by her boyfriend while a restraining order sat uselessly in a courthouse file, paper protection against a man who didn't respect paper. Marcus realized that legal protection is worthless when predators don't fear consequences. So he built something predators would respect. Force. Organization. A network of men who'd all lost someone, who'd all learned that sometimes the only thing standing between a victim and death is another person willing to stand. For 14 years, Victor kept his promise. He extracted 23 women from situations that would have killed them. 23 lives that Adriana's death purchased with blood and guilt. His inner circle became his brothers in every way that mattered. Tyrell Brick Washington, 6'7", 290 pounds, former Marine whose ex-girlfriend was stalked and murdered by a man who violated 5 restraining orders before finally killing her in a grocery store parking lot while shoppers pretended not to see. Hiroshi Ghost Nakamura, surveillance expert and tech genius whose mother was trafficked from Japan under false promises of legitimate work, enduring 15 years of abuse before finally escaping. Denzel Prophet Carmichael, former public defender who quit after watching the system repeatedly fail abuse victims, who stopped believing that justice lived in courtrooms and started building it elsewhere. The Devil's Covenant operated across 7 states with 240 members, all with stories that justified their presence, all with ghosts that demanded action. They maintained safe houses with no addresses, registered to shell companies that couldn't be traced. Legal teams specializing in emergency custody and protective orders. Transportation networks that could move someone across state lines within 4 hours. Financial resources pooled from members' legitimate businesses. Intelligence capabilities that rivaled law enforcement. Their code was absolute. Never use lethal force unless the victim's life is in immediate danger. Document everything, because evidence matters more than revenge. Coordinate with ethical law enforcement when possible. Protect the victim's autonomy. Offer options, not commands. No member acts alone, because brotherhood ensures accountability. Victor had led 19 extractions personally. Each one successful. Each one haunted by the memory of being 19 hours too late to save Adriana, of hearing her voice crack on that phone call and choosing to believe Rodrigo instead of his instincts. Guilt is a weight that never gets lighter. You just learn to carry it differently. But nothing in 14 years of rescues prepared him for Ridgemont, or for the monster who ruled it with money and influence and the kind of power that makes entire towns complicit. Desmond Hartwick didn't lose control when he hurt Simone. That's what made him truly dangerous. The abusers who explode in rage, who break things and scream and make scenes, they eventually expose themselves. But Desmond was methodical. Surgical. He targeted areas covered by clothing. Ribs, abdomen, thighs. He used open palms to avoid obvious knuckle marks. He timed the violence to his schedule, ensuring she healed enough to appear at public events, charity galas, dealership grand openings where she'd smile beside him while cameras flashed and nobody looked close enough to see the fear in her eyes. He documented her injuries himself, photographing bruises with timestamps and keeping files labeled Simone's clumsiness incidents as preemptive evidence of her mental instability should she ever try to leave. At 41 years old, Desmond owned Hartwick Automotive Empire, 7 dealerships across Oregon generating $43 million annually. He sat on the hospital board, sponsored Little League teams, and his family had controlled Ridgemont City Council for 3 generations. His grandfather Cornelius built the fortune during the Depression, buying desperate people's properties for pennies on the dollar. His father Augustus expanded into automotive, political donations, strategic friendships with judges and sheriffs and district attorneys. Desmond perfected the art his family began, wielding power so completely that accountability became impossible. But his public persona was just performance. Behind the charity donations and community involvement lived something else entirely. 7 years ago, Desmond's first wife Gabrielle disappeared. Officially, she abandoned her family for a yoga instructor in California, a story that made people shake their heads about flighty women and midlife crises. Unofficially, Gabrielle had contacted a domestic violence hotline 6 times in her final month. Her sister received a cryptic text message. "I found something about Desmond and the Korloff family. If anything happens to me, nothing more." Gabrielle vanished. No body. No evidence. No investigation that lasted longer than 11 days. What nobody knew except Desmond was that Gabrielle had discovered ledgers showing $13 million in illegal transactions. The Korloff family, a Russian organized crime syndicate, was using Hartwick dealerships to launder money from trafficking operations. Gabrielle photographed everything, planned to take it to federal authorities. She never made it. Desmond's method was surgical. Chloroform in the garage. Body weighted and dumped in Crater Lake, 200 miles away, deep enough that recovery was nearly impossible. Phone destroyed. Digital footprint erased. Her car was found at Portland International Airport, suggesting voluntary departure. The police investigation concluded she'd left willingly, another unhappy housewife seeking freedom. Case closed. Life continued. Desmond remarried 18 months later. Simone was 29, a former art student who met him at a gallery opening, who was charmed by champagne and attention and a man who seemed sophisticated and generous. What began as romance devolved into calculated brutality within 6 months of marriage. 3 weeks ago, Simone found Gabrielle's old phone hidden in the attic, tucked inside a box of Christmas decorations that Desmond never touched. It still had partial charge. She saw the unsent message to Gabrielle's sister. The photos of ledgers. The evidence that could destroy Desmond's empire. The proof that she wasn't his first victim, just the one still breathing. Simone photographed everything with a disposable camera, understanding instinctively that digital trails could be traced. She hid the film canister at Kapoor's diner in the flower storage area, the one place Desmond never visited because he considered it beneath him. She saved $1,700 in cash, hidden in a tampon box because Desmond's need for control didn't extend to feminine products. She memorized the route to the women's shelter in Salem, 93 miles away. She acquired a burner phone for emergencies. She was planning her escape with the careful precision of someone who understood that one mistake meant death. But Desmond sensed something shifting. He checked her odometer daily. Asked questions about her shifts at the diner. Last night, he held a knife to her throat and whispered words that turned her blood to ice. "If you ever think about leaving, remember, I found Gabrielle. I'll find you too. And it won't be quick." Simone was running out of time, counting down to a deadline she couldn't see but felt approaching like a storm on the horizon. Then Victor Castellano asked his question, and everything accelerated. The text message came to Victor's phone at 2:17 that afternoon. Just Simone's work schedule, exactly as he'd instructed. Tuesday and Thursday late shifts, off on Wednesdays when Desmond played poker with Judge Marion Blackwell and Sheriff Glenn Oxley, the same men who'd ensured no investigation into Gabrielle's disappearance went anywhere uncomfortable. Ghost analyzed the information, cross-referencing with hacked security camera footage from around town. He's got cameras everywhere. House, dealerships, even the diner parking lot. She's under surveillance constantly. Prophet pulled public records, his legal expertise cutting through bureaucracy like a knife through paper. Restraining orders don't work on men with judges in their pocket. We need evidence that's undeniable, federal-level charges that local corruption can't touch. The Devil's Covenant arranged a safe house in Astoria, 230 miles away, registered to a shell company that couldn't be traced back to the club. Transportation plan involved a handoff at the state line to avoid tracking. Legal team on standby for emergency protective orders. Everything was systematic, practiced, refined through 23 successful extractions. But then Brick discovered something that complicated everything. He hired a private investigator to follow her. Installed GPS tracker in her car. He's got eyes on her 24/7. We move, he'll know immediately. Victor's decision was immediate. Then we don't move her car. We move her. But Desmond wasn't just watching Simone. Sheriff Oxley called him that same afternoon, voice carrying the easy corruption of a man who'd sold his badge years ago. That biker's been asking questions about Gabrielle. Thought you should know. Desmond made another phone call, this one to his Korloff family contact, a man named Alexei who specialized in permanent solutions to temporary problems. I need a problem handled permanently. Within 6 hours, 2 enforcers checked into Ridgemont's single motel. Russian accents. Military bearing. The kind of professionals who made people disappear without leaving evidence. Ghost spotted them immediately on his surveillance network. They're Korloff family. Contract killers. And they're not here for you, Victor. They're here for Simone. Desmond's cleaning up loose ends. The timeline collapsed from careful planning to immediate crisis. Victor made the call. We go tonight. Now. Prophet's voice crackled over the radio. She's at the diner. Shift ends in 90 minutes. Victor's response carried the weight of 14 years of promises kept. Then we have 90 minutes before she's dead. Simone, this next part is either brilliant or suicidal, and you need to understand why it matters. Because what she did required more courage than most people find in a lifetime. If you think bravery deserves recognition, hit that like button. And stay with me, because the next 48 hours will determine if justice is real or just a word we tell ourselves to sleep better at night. At 10:47 p.m., Kapoor's diner was nearly empty. Just the overnight truckers stopping for coffee, a couple of locals finishing late dinners, the kind of sparse crowd that meant closing shift moved faster. Simone wiped tables with the mechanical efficiency of exhaustion, her mind counting down minutes until she could go home, until she'd face Desmond in whatever mood he'd cultivated during his poker game. Victor entered through the front door, his presence immediately shifting the atmosphere. Simone looked up, saw his face, and knew something had changed. He crossed directly to her, voice low and urgent. You need to come with me right now. Her response was automatic fear. I can't. He's tracking my car. He'll know. Victor's next words stopped her heart. He's not tracking your car anymore. He hired men to kill you tonight. The coffee pot nearly slipped from her hands. What? Victor gestured toward the flower storage. That film you hid. We need it. And we need to leave in the next 5 minutes, or you're not leaving at all. Simone's mind raced, trying to process information that didn't fit reality. How do you know about, but Victor was already moving toward the kitchen. She followed, retrieved the film canister from its hiding place behind the 50-pound flour bags, her hands shaking so badly she nearly dropped it twice. Victor examined it briefly. This is Gabrielle's evidence. Simone nodded. Everything she found. Bank records, names, dates, proof of the money laundering and the trafficking. It's why he killed her. Victor's expression hardened. It didn't save her because she was alone. You're not. Headlights swept across the diner's front windows. The silver Mercedes, 30 minutes before Simone's shift was supposed to end. Desmond never came early. Never deviated from routine unless something was wrong. He wasn't alone. Two men in dark suits exited the vehicle with him, their movements carrying the professional precision of people trained to hurt others efficiently. Irving Kapoor saw them approaching, and something inside the old man finally broke. 61 years of swallowing his conscience, of choosing loyalty to the Hartwick family over basic human decency, of serving coffee to a woman who was dying in front of him while he did nothing. He grabbed his car keys from beneath the register, thrust them at Victor. Back door. Now. Take my Honda. It's clean. Go. Victor, Simone, and Brick exited through the kitchen as Desmond and the enforcers entered through the front. The diner's bell chimed with casual innocence. Desmond scanned the room, his expression shifting from confidence to confusion to rage in the span of 3 seconds. Where is she? Irving stood behind the counter, hands trembling but voice steady for the first time in years. She's gone. And she's never coming back. Desmond's mask of civility shattered. He overturned tables, sent coffee cups crashing to the floor, grabbed Irving by his collar. Where did they take her? Irving met his eyes without flinching. Somewhere you can't reach. Somewhere your money and your name don't mean anything. Outside, Victor pushed Irving's Honda to its limits, Brick and Tyrell flanking on motorcycles, their engines roaring through Ridgemont's quiet streets. Behind them, the Mercedes pursued, headlights cutting through darkness like predatory eyes. The enforcer's black SUV joined the chase, and suddenly they were on Highway 101, speedometer climbing past 95 miles per hour. Simone clutched the film canister against her chest, her entire body shaking with adrenaline and terror. This is insane. He'll kill us all. Victor's hands were steady on the wheel, his voice carrying absolute certainty. You're not going to die tonight. I promise. Simone's response came out broken. You can't promise that. Victor glanced at her, and she saw something in his expression that transcended simple determination. Yes, I can. Because I've made this promise 23 times. And I've kept it 23 times. Ghost's voice crackled over the radio system. You've got problems. Sheriff Oxley just set up a checkpoint 5 miles ahead. They're boxing you in. Cops in front, killers behind. Victor's decision came instantly. We go off-road. He veered onto a logging road, the Honda's suspension protesting as they hit rough terrain. The motorcycles followed, headlights bouncing wildly. The Mercedes couldn't handle the conditions, Desmond forced to stop where pavement ended. But the SUV had all-wheel drive, and the enforcers weren't giving up. They pursued onto the logging road, and then gunfire erupted. Muzzle flashes lit the darkness. Brick's motorcycle was hit, tire exploding, sending him sliding across dirt and rocks. He went down hard. Tyrell immediately circled back, returning fire, his shots precise and controlled. The SUV's front tire blew, vehicle lurching sideways. Victor stopped the Honda, positioned Simone behind the engine block for cover. The enforcers approached on foot now, professionals who understood that hunting in darkness required patience. But then another vehicle arrived, this one a sheriff's department cruiser. Sheriff Oxley had given Desmond access, and now the monster himself stepped out, backlit by headlights, holding a gun that he probably didn't know how to use properly but didn't need to at close range. Three-way confrontation. Victor's team outgunned and outmaneuvered. The enforcers advancing from one side. Desmond and the corrupt sheriff from another. Simone trapped in the middle, clutching evidence of crimes that would die with her if the next 60 seconds went wrong. Everything Victor had fought for, every promise he'd made to Adriana's memory, every woman he'd saved in 14 years of penance, it all came down to this moment in the darkness on a logging road in Oregon. And what happened next, nobody saw coming. Comment below if you'd risk everything to save a stranger, because understanding that answer tells you who you really are. And turn on those notifications, because you need to see how this ends. A second patrol vehicle arrived, but this one moved differently. Pulled up at an angle that blocked the sheriff's car rather than supporting it. Deputy Nolan Breckenridge stepped out, 27 years old, the man who tried to help Simone 18 months ago before being crushed by Hartwick power and money. He'd started drinking after that, seeing a therapist for depression, carrying the weight of his own cowardice. But tonight, his gun was drawn and pointed at Sheriff Oxley. "What are you doing here, Breckenridge?" Oxley's voice carried confusion and the first edge of fear. Nolan's response was steady, clear, the voice of a man who'd finally found his spine. "My job. The one I should have done 18 months ago." He reached to his chest, tapped the small device clipped to his uniform. "I've been wearing a wire for the FBI for 6 months now. Recording everything. Sheriff Oxley, you're on tape taking bribes, obstruction of justice, conspiracy to commit murder. The federal agents have been listening to this entire thing." Headlights appeared through the trees, multiple vehicles converging. FBI, not local police. This was federal jurisdiction now, beyond the reach of Hartwick money and influence. Nolan turned to Desmond, and his expression carried the satisfaction of delayed justice. "I gave them Sheriff Oxley 3 weeks ago. Tonight, I'm giving them you." Simone stepped forward, still clutching the film canister, her voice stronger than it had been in 2 years. "Gabrielle's evidence. Bank records, names, dates, everything about the money laundering and the trafficking. She died trying to expose you. I'm finishing what she started." Desmond's careful control finally shattered completely. "You don't understand what you've done. The Korloff family doesn't forgive. They'll come for you, for everyone you." Simone cut him off, and her words carried the weight of 2 years of survival. "Good. Because neither do I." FBI agents emerged from vehicles, weapons drawn, professional and efficient. The Korloff enforcers were arrested on attempted murder charges, weapons confiscated, rights read with bureaucratic precision. Sheriff Oxley was cuffed, his protests falling on ears that didn't care about local politics. Desmond made one final attempt at control, the instinct of a man who'd never truly lost before. "You think this is over? My lawyers will have me out before morning." The FBI agent closest to him, a woman in her 40s with the tired eyes of someone who'd seen too much, interrupted. "Your lawyers are currently being arrested for RICO violations. Your dealerships are being seized. Your bank accounts frozen. You're done, Mr. Hartwick." Desmond lunged at Simone, the mask finally gone, revealing the monster underneath. Victor intercepted, putting his body between predator and prey one final time. Desmond's voice rose to a scream. "You were nothing. I made you. I own you." Simone looked at him, really looked at him, and felt something she hadn't experienced in years. Not fear. Not submission. Freedom. "You killed Gabrielle. You destroyed lives. You built an empire on suffering. But you don't own me. You never did." Desmond was arrested, still screaming threats that meant nothing anymore, dragged to a federal vehicle in handcuffs. The film Simone had hidden revealed more than money laundering. Gabrielle's photographs showed ledgers with 47 women's names, evidence of human trafficking operations spanning 6 states. The FBI agent examined the evidence with grim recognition. "This connects to operations we've been investigating for 3 years. Your wife documented everything. But the canister held something else too." Gabrielle's burner phone, the one Simone had found in the attic, contained voice memos. Recordings of Desmond's threats, his confessions made in the privacy of their home when he thought no one would ever hear. One recording played from the FBI agent's laptop. Desmond's voice, calm and cold. Nobody will ever find you, just like nobody found the others. The others. Gabrielle wasn't his only victim. The FBI began searching Hartwick properties that night, starting with the dealership storage facilities, the family's vacation home near Crater Lake, anywhere that might hold secrets buried for years. Within 3 days, they recovered Gabrielle's remains from the lake, weighted down exactly as Desmond had left her 7 years ago. Positive DNA identification. Her family finally got closure, a proper burial, the knowledge that she hadn't abandoned them but had died trying to protect others. Gabrielle's sister gave a statement to the press. She tried to save others. In death, she succeeded. 6 weeks passed. Ridgemont, Oregon underwent transformation that was painful and necessary. The trial became national news. Desmond Hartwick charged with first-degree murder, attempted murder, money laundering, human trafficking conspiracy, racketeering. The Korloff family members were indicted based on Gabrielle's evidence, a criminal network that had operated for 15 years finally exposed. Sheriff Oxley pleaded guilty, received 12 years in federal prison. Judge Marion Blackwell stepped down under investigation, his career ending in disgrace. Deputy Nolan Breckenridge was appointed interim sheriff, the youngest in Ridgemont's history, tasked with rebuilding a department corrupted to its foundation. Simone took the stand during Desmond's trial, faced the man who'd controlled her through fear and violence for 2 years, and told her story publicly. She described systematic abuse, methodical cruelty, the calculated destruction of her sense of self. The defense attorneys tried to discredit her, suggested she was unstable, vindictive, lying for attention. But then the prosecution played Desmond's own recordings, his voice describing exactly what he'd done to her, to Gabrielle, to others. The jury deliberated for 3 hours. Guilty on all counts. The judge sentenced him to life without parole on the murder charge, plus 75 additional years on other charges. Desmond Hartwick would die in prison, his empire dismantled, his name forever synonymous with monstrosity. The impact spread beyond one conviction. Ridgemont's police department underwent federal oversight. Mandatory domestic violence training for all city employees. The town council passed new ordinances, established independent oversight committees, began the slow process of acknowledging how completely they'd failed. Hartwick dealerships were restructured, placed under federal monitoring, eventually sold to new ownership that had no connection to the family that had ruled through fear for 3 generations. The Devil's Covenant gained national attention, their mission finally recognized as legitimate protection rather than vigilantism. They formed partnerships with the National Domestic Violence Hotline, established new chapters in 4 additional states, became the safety net that appeared when systems failed. Victor became a spokesperson for men's role in ending domestic violence, traveling to speak at conferences and police academies and community centers. He talked about Adriana, about being 19 hours too late, about transforming failure into purpose. Simone relocated to Portland for a fresh start, enrolled in community college for a degree in social work, began volunteering at the women's shelter that had prepared to take her in that night she almost didn't survive. 6 months after the trial, she spoke at a domestic violence prevention conference, her message simple and devastating. Ask the question. Who did this to you? For words that saved my life. For words that anyone can say. Be the person who sees. Victor returned to Adriana's grave on a Tuesday morning, carrying flowers that she'd loved when she was alive. He stood in silence, hand resting on the headstone. 23 years since he'd failed her. 24 women saved since that failure. The math didn't balance. It never would. But his promise remained. I was 19 hours too late for you, Adriana. But I was right on time for Simone. And Maria. And Janet. And 23 others whose names I'll never forget. He touched the cold stone one final time. I kept my promise, sis. And I'll keep it every day I'm alive. The Devil's Covenant gathered at their clubhouse that night, the brotherhood that had formed from shared tragedy and collective purpose. Victor addressed them with the gravity of a man who understood that their work was never finished. What we do matters. Every woman we save, every monster we stop, it matters. The system fails. We don't. The club voted unanimously to establish the Adriana Fund, resources dedicated to supporting domestic violence survivors with housing, legal assistance, therapy costs. Each member committed to training law enforcement nationwide, spreading the knowledge that protection requires more than paper and policies. This story isn't just about Victor and Simone. It's about every single person who sees something wrong and has to choose. Speak up or stay silent. Silence is complicity. Irving, Felicity, the people of Ridgemont, they weren't evil. But their fear enabled evil. Comfort isn't worth someone's life. One question can change everything. 4 words. That's all it took to break 2 years of suffering. Ask the question. Be the person who sees. Systems fail when good people do nothing. Restraining orders, police reports, hotline calls, Gabrielle tried everything the right way. She died because the system was designed to protect power, not people. Trauma can become purpose. Victor couldn't save his sister. That failure became fuel for saving 23 others. Your pain doesn't have to be meaningless. If this story moved you, here's what you can do right now. Subscribe to this channel for more stories of courage that need to be told. Share this video with someone who needs to hear it. You might save a life. Comment below, I will ask the question, to show you're committed to being the person who doesn't look away. Like this video if you believe in justice, even when the system fails. Turn on notifications so you never miss a story that could change how you see the world. If you or someone you know is experiencing domestic violence, the National Domestic Violence Hotline is available 24 hours a day at 1-800-799-7233. Text START to 88788. These services are free, confidential, available always. You are not alone. You are not trapped. There are people ready to help, just like Victor helped Simone. Ask for help. You deserve to be safe. Victor rode his motorcycle down Highway 101 3 weeks later, sun setting behind him, the road stretching endlessly ahead. His phone buzzed. Text message from an unknown number. Help. Please. He's going to kill me. Victor's face hardened with purpose, that expression that meant promises would be kept and monsters would face consequences. He turned his motorcycle around, heading toward coordinates the text included, toward another woman who needed someone to ask the question. The road goes on. The fight continues. Because somewhere, right now, another woman needs someone who won't look away. One question started this story. One choice to care. One decision to act. You have that power too. Use it. Subscribe and join a community that refuses to look away.